Welcome to Pediatrics, Immunity and Vaccines. Before going into the details of immunity and vaccination, we'll first see how a person gets a disease. There are three factors. They're called epidemiological triad. When all these three factors comes in the right proportion, time, situation, you get an infection. First factor is agent. It can be a bacteria, virus, a protozoa or a fungus. So any of these organisms which has adequate strength, if it reaches the right media or right victim, they can cause an infection. Second thing is the host. Host is basically humans, or it can be animals. And sometimes certain organisms which usually reside in animals can accidentally reach a human. So if the immunity is quite strong, they can probably resist the infection. And depending on the immunity, the person can get symptoms which are mild, moderate or severe. And the outcome also depends on the immunity of the person. Third is the environment. Certain geographical region can have more susceptibility to a particular infection. Certain seasons are more, conducive for spreading certain infections. So the person is exposed to an organism that is ready to enter the body. What are the possible outcomes? Total avoidance of infection is theoretically possible, mask, hand sanitizing, social distancing, but it's not always practically possible. This particular organism enters the body, but is not causing any symptoms, is not causing any disease. This person can act as a carrier because he doesn't know that he is infected. He carries the virus from one particular place and gives it to another person. So that is asymptomatic infection. Probably it's because of his strong immune response. Next is symptomatic infection. This organism has entered the body, is causing a disease, is causing symptoms. The symptoms can be mild, moderate or severe depending again on the virulence of the organism and also the immunity of this particular person. Then there can be two outcomes, recovery from the infection or death. Recovery can be a total recovery or recovery with some morbidity, some disability. And so death, that's the end. Recovery, we assume that this person is immune to that disease a second time. But there can be twists. This particular person is not producing adequate immunity to prevent a second infection. Or this particular organism comes in another form. Genetic modification of this particular organism re-enters the body and causes a reinfection. So these are the possible outcomes after a natural exposure to an organism. So how does the protective mechanisms of our body work? How does immunity of our body work? So there are two types of immunity. One is innate immunity and the other is adaptive immunity. Innate immunity is which is already built in. It is basically immediate and non-specific response. The skin, mucosal barrier, acidity in the stomach, all tries to prevent the entry of this organism. It's like keeping or building the walls around your compound and keeping a gate so that the intruders don't come in. And if at all they come in, they have to face the barrier before entering. And then you have got natural killer cells, phagocytic cells like neutrophils, macrophages and monocytes to kill the organisms which are entering the body. It's like, keeping dogs at your house. The problem is they attack each and everything that enters. Like it may be a person who is known to you, but is new to your home. So they usually do not differentiate. Their attack is same. They bark and bite each and every person coming in their way. So natural killer cells and phagocytes act in such a way. That is again innate immunity. That is immediate and non-specific. And very rarely these dogs can attack the home members. That's how allergy occurs because this immunity is not supposed to attack our own tissues, but sometimes that happens and that's how allergic symptoms start. Now we have got adaptive immunity. Adaptive immunity is more slow and pathogen specific. We have got T lymphocytes which is responsible for humoral or antibody mediated immunity and T lymphocytes which are cellular or cell mediated immunity. It's like keeping cameras and artificial intelligence to detect intruders into your place. So specific instructions are given. Okay, this type, the one who is trying to jump the gate is an intruder. Such things are fed into the artificial intelligence, and they identify the right person and they devise protective mechanism against that particular thing in a very specific manner. So these adaptive immunity is very slow but pathogen specific. So if the antibody is against chickenpox virus, the immunity is against only chickenpox virus. Measles virus can enter. So that's why it is called pathogen specific immunity. Now there can be two types of immunity in this adaptive immunity. One is active immunity and the other one is passive immunity. Active immunity is when the antibody is produced by our own body. That is an antigen. Antigen is anything that produces antibody in our body. Antibody generator is an antigen. Antigen can be any of those 4 agents or their components which enter our body. And our body produces antibody very specifically against that particular antigen. So that can occur in 2 ways, natural or artificial. Natural is when you get a natural infection. The artificial is when these particular antigens are introduced into our body through artificial means, basically immunization. Then you have got passive immunity. Passive immunity is this antibody produced in another body is introduced into our body. So that can be produced in another person or it can be produced in another animal before introduction to our body. That again can be 2, natural and artificial. Natural transfer of passive immunity occurs through breast milk, and artificial transfer of immunity, passive immunity occurs through blood and blood products, IVIG, then plasma, all these things actually antibodies from another source is introduced into our body. So how does vaccines work? As mentioned earlier, vaccines works on adaptive immunity. They create humoral and cell-mediated immunity. So when a vaccine is introduced into our body, it produces a response, the primary response, a rapid increase in IgM. It's a particular protective thing. And then what happens is it gradually comes down. By 4 weeks, the primary response fades. At that point of time, you give the second dose of vaccine. Then it produces a secondary response where the peak of these antibodies goes slightly higher and the dip is slightly slower. And then you may give a third dose. Then the rise is still steeper, but the fading is in a very slow manner. That way, the basic antibody levels are maintained to give adequate protection against that particular infection. So, depending on how many doses are required, how many boosters are required, based on the studies, dosage schedule of a vaccine is fixed. So, immunization provides protection against specific diseases. Oral polio vaccine provides immunity against polio virus. Diphtheria vaccine gives protection against diphtheria virus. So people think that, okay, we have already taken 3 vaccines, then why did I get a 4th disease? That's because the 4th disease is not protected by giving these 3 vaccines. If you want a protection against one particular disease, you have to get vaccinated for that particular disease. Then there is a concept called herd immunity. Herd immunity is basically where, as mentioned earlier, you have installed security system in your house, and in the colony almost 80% of houses have installed security system. So by default, the other 20 houses in that colony gets protection. Herd immunity acts that way. Majority of people in a community is vaccinated. The people who are not vaccinated also by default gets a protection against a particular disease. That's what is meant by herd immunity. So now the types of vaccines, whichever vaccine is used, whichever preparation is used, all of them introduce an antigen into our body and stimulate our body to produce antibody against that particular antigen. So different antigens can be used. It can be genetic material of a particular organism. As in Pfizer vaccine or a Moderna vaccine is using the RNA material of coronavirus. It can be a viral vector. A part of this virus is tied along with another virus which can cause mild symptoms, and it is introduced into our body. So the other virus acts as a vector in carrying the material of the virus which we actually need protection for. Covishield vaccine is a viral vector vaccine. Then you have got protein subunit. A part of this organism is introduced into our body and antigen production is stimulated. Acellular pertussis vaccine, the painless vaccine, is basically a protein submutant vaccine. Then you have got inactivated organism. An organism which is live is taken, it's passed through formaldehyde, basically that organism is killed and that organism is introduced into our body. Injectable polio vaccine is an inactivated organism. Then you have got live attenuated organism, where this live organism is passed through various processes and their disease causing property is taken off and this weakened organism is introduced into our body. Then you have got a toxoid, basically our tetanus toxoid, TT injection, diphtheria toxoid. So the toxin of that particular bacteria is processed, the disease causing property, the symptom causing property is taken off, it is weakened and a toxoid is introduced into our body. So all these things act as antigen producing antibody in our body and this antibody is produced by our own body, only the introduction is different. It acts similarly as a natural infection. But this introduction of any of these antigen does not cause that disease or symptoms in our body. Very rarely that causes some reaction in a very mild form. Now, what are the other ingredients in a vaccine? It can have the culture media. So, to produce a particular organism, whether to weaken it or kill it, it has to be passed through different culture media. It can be duck, chick embryo, human or monkey kidney cells, Varro cells. So sometimes what happens is this culture media, remnants of this culture media may be present in the vaccine and that can cause allergic reaction. Then you have got adjuvants. Adjuvants are added to the vaccine to increase the antibody producing property of that particular antigen. So aluminum, mercury, lipids, synthetic DNA, all these are used in vaccines as adjuvants. So there is a scare, aluminum can cause problem, mercury can cause problem. So the compounds used in vaccine, the aluminum and mercury compounds are usually non-poisonous types and in very mild quantities. We usually ingest or get more quantity through our food and daily routines. So very small quantity of aluminum or mercury may be introduced as adjuvant in through vaccines. And then you have got vaccine stabilizers. This is to maintain the potency of this particular antigen. So sugars and gelatin may be used for that. And then you have got inactivators. Inactivators is basically to control the growth of other contamination basically from this organism to prevent the organism from getting reactivated. So you are basically keeping that particular organism inactivated by passing through formaldehyde. So you might have heard the compound which is used to preserve dead bodies is used in vaccines. Yes, formaldehyde is used to keep an organism inactivated. Then you have got antibiotics to prevent contamination. So in a viral vaccine, maybe you may be adding neomycin to prevent the growth of a bacteria. So all these components may be present in different quantities or different combination in many of the vaccines we use. So all of these components are time tested and after all the studies, they are proven safe and that's what has been incorporated in vaccines. Very rarely these components can cause allergic reaction and that's when you are prevented or you are being deprived of a second dose of a same vaccine. Now, what is vaccine trial? We should know that the vaccine is safe. The introduction of vaccine is more beneficial than getting the infection. It is safer than getting an infection. So for that, we need to, the vaccine need to pass through different trials. First is preclinical research and test and treatment. So it is tested in guinea pigs, rats, monkeys to make sure that it is not causing more harm than benefits. Then you have got phase 1 trial. Phase 1 trial is done in a small group of people to assess the safety of this particular vaccine, that it is not causing any harm. Then you have got phase 2 trial. This is tested in more numbers to see whether it is efficacious. That is it doing the purpose it is supposed to do? And in phase 2 trial, we need to decide on the best dose, how many shots are required, how many boosters are required, whether they are required, and all these things are decided on phase 2 trial. Also the side effect should be minimal. So if you take 100 people, 90% of people gets adequate antibody levels after say 3 doses of vaccine. So that is the schedule of that vaccine. 5 people may get adequate immunity after 1 dose. But that won't be fixed because we will be leaving the rest of the 95 people at increased risk even after getting vaccinated. 5 people may not be getting adequate protection even after 3 doses. But it's difficult to identify which 5 people. So what we presume is after 3 doses, 95% of people get it. So that should be good enough. And that's how a dosage schedule is fixed. Then you have got a phase 3 trial where thousands of individuals of different age group are monitored for efficacy and safety of this particular vaccine, and that is usually a RCT. Some are given vaccine and some are not given vaccine, and then you check the side effects and efficacy of these vaccines. And then it is published as a scientific paper, and then you get license and approval for usage, and then you decide on the best storage and distribution and administration method. And after all these, after commercialization and being used extensively, still there will be ongoing studies of evaluation and continuous monitoring of these vaccines. That is basically phase 4 trial. So any vaccines you use pass through all these scrutiny before getting administered to you. This first time, this COVID vaccines had bypassed some of these before getting used commercially. So hope now you know something about immunity and how vaccines work. Happy parenting.